6 months after the murders on Lake Herman Road, most people believed the killer was gone. The investigation had stalled, no arrest had been made, no suspect had emerged. For the families of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, the pain remained. For police, the case remained open, but for the public, the tragedy was slowly fading into memory. Then, on the night of July 4th, 1969, the killer returned, and this time, someone survived. Blue Rock Springs Park sat on the outskirts of Vallejo, California. Like Lake Herman Road, it was a place where young couples often parked their cars to spend time together. It was quiet, dark, and isolated enough that strangers could approach unnoticed. Shortly before midnight, 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 19-year-old Michael McGow were sitting inside a parked Corvair. The evening had been ordinary. America was celebrating Independence Day. Fireworks exploded across the country. Families gathered together. Friends attended parties. Few people could imagine that one of America's most infamous serial killers was preparing for his next attack. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then headlights appeared. A vehicle entered the parking area. The car approached Farron and McGow. For a moment, they assumed it was a police officer. The vehicle stopped, then unexpectedly drove away. The couple relaxed. The strange encounter seemed over, but minutes later the car returned. This time it parked directly behind them. A man stepped out. He carried a flashlight. As he approached the passenger side, the bright beam shined directly into the vehicle. For a brief moment, Michael Mageau believed it really was a police officer. Then the shooting began. Without warning, the stranger opened fire. Bullets shattered glass. The confined interior of the car became chaos. Michael was struck multiple times. Darlene was hit repeatedly. The attack happened so quickly that neither victim had time to react. The gunman turned and began walking away. Then he paused. Hearing movement from inside the car, he returned and fired again. More shots, more violence, more certainty. The killer wanted no survivors, or so he thought. Eventually he left the scene. His vehicle disappeared into the darkness. Inside the car, both victims were gravely wounded, but Michael Mageau was still alive. That fact would change everything, because for the first time, someone could describe the attacker. Emergency responders arrived. Darlene Ferrin was transported to the hospital. Despite efforts to save her, she later died from her injuries. Michael Mageau survived. His survival gave investigators something they had never had before, a witness. His recollection was imperfect. The attack happened at night. The flashlight obscured details. The shooting was sudden and traumatic. But Michael provided important observations about the man who attacked them. He described a white male, heavy build, short hair, large face. Some details would later influence suspect investigations for decades. Yet the most important event of the night had not happened at Blue Rock Springs. It happened about 40 minutes later. Inside the Vallejo Police Department, a calm voice spoke. The caller reported the shooting. Then he said something extraordinary. He claimed responsibility not only for the attack that had just occurred, but also for the murders at Lake Herman Road 6 months earlier. In a single phone call, two separate crimes became connected. The caller provided details known only to investigators, details that convinced police they were dealing with the same offender. The murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were no longer isolated. A pattern was emerging. The killer wanted credit. The phone call lasted only moments. Then the line went dead. Police immediately began tracing what they could. The call had been placed from a public payphone. The location was chilling. The booth stood only a short distance from the police station itself. The killer had essentially delivered his message directly to law enforcement. That decision revealed something important about his personality. He was becoming confident, perhaps even arrogant. He no longer wanted to remain invisible. He wanted recognition. The attack at Blue Rock Springs transformed the investigation. No longer were police searching for a possible local killer responsible for a single event. Now they faced someone who had struck twice, someone willing to contact authorities, someone who seemed to enjoy the attention. The similarities between Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs were impossible to ignore. Both attacks targeted young couples. Both occurred at night. Both happened in relatively isolated locations. Both involved a firearm. And now the same voice appeared connected to both crimes. Fear spread throughout Northern California. Young couples became nervous about places they once considered safe. Parents worried. Newspapers reported developments daily. Police increased pressure on the investigation. Yet despite the growing urgency, the killer remained unidentified. The surviving witness helped investigators build a rough profile, but there was still no name, no photograph, no arrest. Just a man who appeared out of darkness and vanished again. The weeks following Blue Rock Springs became some of the most important in the entire Zodiac investigation, because the killer had discovered something. Violence alone gave him victims. Attention gave him power. The phone call was only the beginning. Soon he would realize there was an even bigger audience available. The newspapers. Millions of people could be reached through headlines. Millions could read his words. Millions could fear his threats. And unlike the police, the public could not investigate him. They could only imagine him. That realization would transform an unknown murderer into a national mystery. Within weeks, letters began arriving. Not ordinary letters, not apologies, not confessions seeking forgiveness. These were demands, threats, and coded messages. The writer claimed responsibility for the murders. He included details that convinced authorities he was authentic. Then he offered something unusual: a cipher, a puzzle, a secret message hidden within symbols. The newspapers faced a difficult choice: print the message and potentially help a killer gain publicity, or refuse and risk further violence. The decision they made would change criminal history. The mysterious murderer was preparing to introduce himself to the world, not with a real name, not with a face, but with a symbol. And eventually, with a title that would become one of the most famous names in criminal history: the Zodiac. Looking back today, Blue Rock Springs represents a turning point. Lake Herman Road was the beginning. Blue Rock Springs was the escalation. The killer had become bolder, more confident, more willing to communicate. The murders themselves were terrible, but what followed would create the legend. The letters, the ciphers, the media attention, the fear, everything that people now associate with the Zodiac case truly began after Blue Rock Springs. And it began because one victim survived long enough to tell investigators what happened. Had Michael Mageau died that night, the history of the case might have unfolded very differently. But he lived, and his testimony helped establish the connection between the crimes. The unknown killer was no longer just a murderer. He was becoming a storyteller of his own crimes, a manipulator of public fear, a man who wanted attention almost as much as he wanted violence. In the next episode, the Zodiac's letters arrive at California newspapers. The ciphers appear. The public becomes obsessed. And for the first time, the killer reveals the message he wanted the world to read. This is Echoes of Humanity TV. YouTube.com/Echoes of Humanity TV.